Namaskar. Happy Halloween. Happy All Saints Day. Dia de los Muertos. Day of the Dead. So it's been a while, and this is one of my favorite times of the year. I mean, I love Halloween, but and Dia de los Muertos, but uh, you know, there's deeper meanings behind those. But then it's also a big season in Hinduism. Lots of holidays and observances. So it's a really good time to reflect. And I'll be honest, I also love the fall because of Halloween costumes, trick or treating, amazing football. So, yeah. But I wanted to make a video because it's been a while. I've just been ridiculously busy. And I'm going to be talking about several different things today. And so I'm going to try to keep it, good segues from one topic to another. Bear with me. But I just, I was thinking about, well, how do I pull all these things together? But like I said, I'm just so busy that I don't have like a lot of time nowadays to make videos, make this kind of content, and I think do a better job. And I just have bigger fish to fry. And after the last video I made, um, which was about the unfortunate circumstances of my position within the medical field that I was finding myself in. Shortly after that, you know, some good things, like I was catching some breaks, and good things now are coming together, especially like professionally. So I've been on the road a lot, been traveling a lot, and like I said, some good things are coming together, but I don't really want to discuss that too much. um, there are some people that I really don't want them to know about what's going on with me, and I want to, protect that part of my life. And I'll kind of get to this later about relationships and how I have very few relationships. Like one people that I would say I just really trust, and I can count that on one hand easily. Um, but I've realized that like that's okay. Like I have a lot of acquaintances and Facebook friends or whatever, um, and if those evolve into something more, great. But I'm not really too concerned about that. How many relationships I have, and that will be part of the discussion for tonight. Is this, detachment, right? And what that could mean for a lot of us. Um, but with the holidays like Halloween, All Saints Day, Day of the Dead, um, this is a really important time to reflect and introspect, and especially with the dead, the lost loved ones. Um, this phrase kept on repeating in my head recently, like the dead make way for the living, but the living still need to honor the dead. And what that means is like the ones that have come before us have paved the way, in one way or another. And whether we have good feelings about certain people, whether we're related to them or just historical figures, um, there's a certain foundation that they have built. Um, and some people might, well, we can't honor like all these horrible people that have done bad things. And I'm not saying like we should, but there there should be a point that we all learn how to find the silver lining in every situation, even the worst ones. And I know that's like really hard to do for a lot of us. It still is hard for me in many respects. But, I think that there is always something to learn. And sometimes even like those traumatic events that we go through, and I try to be very careful throwing that word out there, trauma, traumatized, trauma victim, PTSD. Like everybody thinks that just because you went through a traumatic event that you automatically, therefore, have PTSD, which is not true. Excuse me. So, um, you can still, sometimes those bad things that happen to us done from other people, groups of people, or certain events, or even if it's just a place, or even types of habits or activities that we have. You, as a Hindu at least, sometimes that's a way to like bring your karma back to you so then you can learn a lesson. Um, and and sometimes it's a way to resolve and burn up that karma. So it can be digging up the karma, but can also be resolving it, burning those roots. And so even with, like, let's say, like, someone did you really wrong, did you dirty in a relationship, whatever kind it is, even if they were the one to hurt you and leave you, that in itself can be a blessing, right? Because there is probably some karmic tie there that you have with this person. And now that is a way that it's been resolved. So you can count that as a blessing, right? And that they also revealed to you their true character, how they feel about you, if they, lack of respect and care, but also it shows where they're at in their soul's journey. And if you're recognizing that, and then you're recognizing the things that you need to work on, then in a way, like that's a huge blessing, to you at least, and eventually it will be to them. But for you, like that's a wake up call, right? And then they did you a solid by, you know, leaving you high and dry, or effing you over. I know that's hard to look at it like that, and like I said, I'm not saying I'm perfect at it. I still have a lot of ways to go incorporating all that into my own psyche and the archetypes. But it's a reminder, right? Like, where can I find the silver lining in this? And then a lot of, I've talked about in some of my other posts and videos about, sometimes you get with whatever it is, doesn't have to be a breakup or anything like that, right? Job loss, a loss of a loved one, whatever it is, that, in the moment, it's really hard to see like there's any value in it, right? But excuse me, if you sit with that for a bit, you'll start to see, like, okay, especially if it was like I was just saying, sorry, got off track there, but if they left you high and dry, or if it was just a sudden thing, it's like catastrophe, right? Crisis, trauma, that in a way, if that's it, right, there's really not a whole lot lingering from the other side, like the other person or party or thing, and you're the only one that's still trying to cope and process and deal with it. that that is like the closure that you may have not wanted, but that's the closure that you probably needed. And be thankful in a way, especially if it deals with a certain person or people or a place, or even like a substance or an activity like drug use, right? Alcohol. That now this is like a way for you to cut that karmic cord and be able to move on, right? Sometimes we think, oh, if I just got closure in this way, it it would be better. But a lot of times that's you kind of hoping that you can still keep that person or that thing or that activity in or that place in your life still and make it work somehow. But really, like, that's not what you need, right? You need a clean break, and that person or that thing or that event, that place gave it to you, right? They didn't even make, if it was a person or people, they might not even realize that their shitty behavior and actions towards you is actually like it's doing you a big favor. So, and then the other thing is how to look back at those events. And this ties right in with All Saints Day, All Hallows Eve, Day of the Dead, where if you lose, you have your ancestors and your lost loved ones, or a loss of a relationship or a job or your dream home or whatever, that some people say like, oh, it didn't affect me. I just was like, okay, fine, bye, and then moved on with their life. Like it was that easy. Most of the time, not everybody, but the vast majority of people that act like that do that, and I've said this in previous videos, that is delusional behavior. That is them trying to run away from facing like what they need to face. And they're just kicking the can down the road. So whether it's in this life or a future life, they're going to have to deal with that, right? So that's not a healthy way to deal with it. That is delusional denial. So what is better is to sit with it for a while and process it. Like if it was a relationship, you don't just jump into another relationship or a string of relationships or being promiscuous. That is not going to be helpful. That is a distraction, and it seems like it's helpful. It can be fun, it can be pleasurable, or even if it's jumping into substances or even just like other behaviors, other activities. If you're using that just to get it out of your head and not face it, not sit with it, process it, heal from it, and with those feelings to integrate it into all aspects of your psyche, then friend, like, you're just kicking the can down the road. So taking your time to sit with it and then getting to the point where you're like, you know what? I release this. I release this holding on to this person, whether it's a relationship or, you lost someone to cancer or an accident. All right, I release you. I release those feelings, and I call back all the energy and time and effort and et cetera, that I've been pouring out there, trying to hold on to this person or this thing, trying to get them back, or, beg God or the gods to bring them back, or this thing or this job or whatever. Say, no, I call it back. I need it for me. This is going to help me heal. This is going to help me move on. And when you can start to do that, right? When you can start to call back that energy and then say, I release this, right? It's not like you're going to just shove it out of your mind, right? Try to, delete the memory bank of this person, this place, this thing. No, because you still want to be able to remember it, because that's why certain holidays like these exist, right? So then you can remember and reflect and honor those people, honor those relationships, honor those things that you once had or once were involved in, good, bad, cool, weird, ugly, whatever it is, because that is making you who you are today. That is helping you progress on your soul's journey. Not just this lifetime, but future ones. At least that's what we believe. Us Hindus and people of the Dharmic cultural ethos. So I think what's important is that when you can get to that point where you cut the cord, right? Cut the karmic ties with this person, release them. And then, honor the memory. Learn from, like, okay, this was a lesson. This was maybe also a way to dig up karma and or burn it, resolve it, let it completely unfold so then I can move forward, right? Like that is a good place to be, friend. That's a very good place to be. And I'll be honest, like it's taken me a long time to do that with some things, but then also just to realize it with other things. Like, oh man. So I wanted to touch too on that aspect of like, especially with remembering our, the dead and our lost loved ones, is that sometimes, the way I believe it, and I think there are certain, texts and scriptures, I guess you could call it, within Hinduism that talks about how some people, they don't just get born again immediately. Sometimes there's kind of like a side quest, mixed in there, or something else that needs to be done. And maybe sometimes some people become wandering or hungry ghosts. But sometimes they stick around too, more in their, astral spiritual body to help us here, help maybe their relatives and, their loved ones that are still living. And maybe they're helping them, and that helps resolve some karma, personal karma, but as well as ancestral karma. And that's one thing. But in general, it's good to honor and remember the dead and our lost loved ones. But maybe you could approach it like, if you're still around, I ask for your blessings, and I pray for blessings to you to be able to move forward in your soul's journey. But if you're around and you're around to help us, help me, a loved one, then, I ask for your blessings. I ask for your guidance, right? That's one way to approach it, one way to look at it. But generally, like, I think of my Japanese mom, Michio. Man, I loved her so much. I love her so much. And she is such a great person, just genuinely a very kind, generous, funny person, And, I often, back in the day before she passed away, I was like, if I ever get married, she's going to be grandma. She's going to be a grandma to kids that I have, I just envisioned that. And, it took me a long time to get over her passing, because I said this in a video quite a while back, but even before she got sick, and she didn't ask me, I did this out of my own volition. I said, if you or one of the other family members ever get really sick, I'll come to Japan and help out. And that I couldn't do that. And I tried to get to Japan, but I was not getting any job or scholastic opportunities in Japan, especially at that time. Was very expensive to live in, especially Tokyo, where they were kind of on the outskirts, but still, it was really expensive. But then I got this full ride scholarship to go to Korea, and she's like, you got to take it, and I took it, and but I was like, I was trying to tell myself, oh well, it will be cheaper there, and you can visit once a month. Flights are really easy and they're cheaper. Well, that never really happened, and I only saw her like 2 weeks before she passed away. And she said, she was not cognizant most of the time until the very end, the day that I was leaving. Actually, like, I was leaving within a few minutes, and she became very cognizant, and she said, don't beat yourself up about this. Please go live your life, live a happy life. And that that was hard, because that was the second time that a woman special in my life passed away from cancer, and I didn't get to spend a whole lot of time with them until like a few days or a couple weeks before they passed away. And I was the other person is my stepsister. She died really young, in her 20s, and uh, I went to visit, and she was pretty much out of it. And she was just like Michio. Her name was Linda. But Michio and Linda were both like skin and bone, just mostly, just drugged up, out of it, sedated. And right as I was about to leave, like Linda, becomes cognizant. And she's like so happy to see me. And she said, please, convey to your family, like your brothers, like I love them. I wish them the best. I pray for them. And then that very next morning, she passed away. So everybody was saying, like, I think she was waiting for you to pass that message on. So same with Michio. I think Michio was just kind of hanging on to not just me, but her children to, when she could get a moment of being with it, aware, cognizant that she could pass on the message. But I was beating myself up after her passing for many years. And that in a way is also like still keeping them earthbound, even if they have like this mission, right? The side quest, or they're trying to help the living. You say, I thank you, and I thank you for your blessings. I thank you for your guidance, but I release you, and I want you to move forward in peace, right? And that's a right there, that's you're blessing everybody, both sides. And that's something that, I try to stress to people, like, don't, wish, oh, I wish this person was still alive. I wish they could talk to them. I wish they would help me. It's like, well, if they're around, then say, hey, but other than that, you should just wish them, peace and luck, or good fortune and well-being on their journey, because we all have to go through this. At least that's what we believe, who believe in reincarnation and whatnot. But even if you don't, right? And let's say you're, a Christian, and, well, don't you want them to go to heaven, right? Move on to a better place, right? Like, we all have to. Sadhguru actually put it humorously, but it's very just straight to the point and dead honest. That the moment you are born, you are stepping towards the grave. You have one foot in the grave, and that's kind of why I did half, right? And like, you can't really see like all the detail. Let me see if I can get this candle here. So yeah, but half and half, and then I even did the hat, anyways. But that was the idea, is that, a lot of us, we really try to defy aging and death. That's another thing that we have a hard time letting go of. Actually, multiple things, like our youth, our good looks, our athleticism, that's usually tied to youth. And and then the loss of innocence and wonder, right? Because when you're young, when you're a kid, and you haven't experienced some things that a lot of adults already have experienced, there's it's just like a new frontier, all right? It's like somewhat familiar because we've seen it, heard about it, and as a Hindu, like, we've already lived so many lifetimes before, that's a little, familiar, but it's also still also new and exciting, or a little, anxiety provoking. And all those feelings, right, that like makes you feel alive, like all those emotions, all those thoughts, it's a whirlwind. And it's interesting to see people who have lived a very sheltered, or they've been oppressed, or very restricted, inhibited from trying things in their younger years, and then later on, they have a midlife crisis, they get a divorce or whatever, and then they're just like acting like a teenager or a 20 something. It's really interesting to see that, because, like, what I was just saying is that it's still familiar to everybody, in one way, shape, or form, or multiple ways. And yet you still see these people feeling like they have to go do this, right? They have to do it. Or that's the way to freedom. That's the way to feel liberated. That's the way to really learn about who I am. And in a way, they're not entirely wrong because there's usually something that they have to resolve there that they haven't let go. They haven't let go of in a previous life, right? And then every time that they're restricted, constricted, oppressed, like prevented from doing so, that urge, that desire only gets like intensified. All right. And that's why, again, I've said this in previous videos, at least from a Hindu, it makes sense that there are a lot of people who do suffer with certain addictions because they haven't like quite got it out of their system yet, or they've been restricted in the past from, trying it, and it just gets that urge right there. We become so addicted to our sense gratifications that we have to do it, and then we just go way too overboard, right? And then it's like undoing that, right? We have to like uproot those urges, and burn the roots, burn it at the root, right? But sometimes the only way to do that is to like go all the way down, to the bottom. So, but anyways, with these older people, middle-aged and older, like you see that, and part of you is like, well, that's kind of sad, but another part's like, but this may be the way to finally be able to release some of those things. And sometimes it has nothing to do actually with trying a certain substance or sex or whatever. It's really, again, that's a distraction. But sometimes you need to get entangled into that mess to see just how entangled you are to your sense gratifications, to certain karmic ties, to your own karma that you need to resolve, dig up and dissect and then resolve, and that sometimes that's the only way to do it until it's like shoved right in your face, really nice and good, right? And that's why, again, some of you may not like hearing this, but that is why sometimes things end disastrously for us, like relationships or a job or whatever, because we are so attached to something and we're avoidant of what we need to face. So, going to try to tie it back into, like Day of the Dead and All Saints Day and all, remembering our loved ones and reflecting on the past is, so I'm not asking all of you to get to a point where it's like, I'm completely done with this person, this place, this thing. Like I never, ever, ever want to have, any contact or interaction with it again. Because none of us know, or very, very few of us know, I should say, but most of us don't realize, like, what's in the future, what the future holds for us, whether it's this life or a future life. And for me, being a Hindu, like what the gods have in store for us, or what my Jyotish chart has in store for me. Because that person, that place, that thing might circle back into your life again. So rather, I think a healthier, perspective and approach would be, okay, so this thing happened with this person or this place or this thing. And for right now, like I'm done with it. Like I don't want this person, this place, this thing in my life. I want to release that. I want to call back my energy, my time, everything, and heal and move forward, right? If for some reason it or they come back into my life, then I will cross that bridge when I get there, right? But for now, I wish them the best, or even if it's a place, because some places just carry a lot of bad energy, and sometimes entities and ghosts and demons and things like that. But say I wish that person, that place, that thing healing, or I hope that it it becomes a better thing, a non-malevolent entity or thing. and I want to heal and move forward and just go our separate ways, right? That's probably a better approach. Excuse me. Because again, you can say I'm done with this person or this place or X, Y, and Z, but you don't know if like it's thoroughly done, right? And I'm not trying to say, oh, leave the door open for that person to come back in your life and you start a friendship, relationship, or whatever it was. Again, first of all, that's up to you. But if there is a lot of hurt, and if again, I try to be careful with this word. If you were truly traumatized from that person, place, or thing, then honestly, it's best that you just, for the meantime, be like, I release this. I release all ties. I call back my energy. I want to focus on my healing. I hope that person, place, or thing heals as well, or becomes more wholesome. And I'm just gonna move forward with my life this direction. What I feel is truly helpful for me and for all parties, or all everything. That is probably a wise thing to do, right? And I'm not saying you can never ever go back to like having a relationship with this person, or going back to live in a certain place, or going back to a certain job, or whatever, because sometimes you need to go off and heal, right, and then come back and you're able to approach that in a much better place. But again, that is another thing that I've stressed in previous videos, is that you want to make sure that everybody is healed, right? Everybody is on the same page. And really, if it was truly a traumatizing thing, situation, then you have to make sure that your head is screwed on right, not just theirs, or that place is better, that job is better, whatever. You need to make sure that your head is screwed on right, because you need to be at a place where you will not have your boundaries disrespected. And that the second that happens, the second, not the minute, not, giving it time, you are like, I am protecting myself. I'm going off this way. Okay. Right. Because there are people that will fool you. Oh, I've healed, or a job says, oh, we've changed our tune. We've realized the error of our ways. Like, that sometimes happens, but it's a rare thing. So you need to make sure more of yourself that you have the agency of mind. All your faculties are shipshape, and that the second that some fishy comes up again, you're like, nope, not okay. I'm done. All right, adios, muchachos. Vámonos. I don't know, like the mustache and whatnot I have going, and the look, I don't know. It's just the Spanish coming out in me. I don't think I have any Spanish in me, but we'll find out soon. That's a different story. Yeah, so it's better to be in a place like, again, I want to cut all these ties for now. I want to focus on myself. Go heal, right? Because that when you do that and you're not looking for anything, this is the other thing I wanted to talk about, is when you successfully can detach to a really healthy degree and just focus on yourself, right? Being the best version of you, right? The best, I would say the original, the authentic version of you, then you're in a good place. And usually that's when things start to turn around. And I read this statistic the other day that I think it's like we lose 60 men to suicide, or self-deleting. I know YouTube's probably going to catch that, but like every hour, right? So every minute we're losing a guy. And man, woman, whatever, it doesn't matter. It's a sad thing, unfortunate thing. And it's just like, then it's not stupid, it's a good song. I actually saw them live in Nashville. Was it the Wilson Twins? Just, hey, hold on for one more day, things will go your way. Yeah, that that's very true, right? And even if it's not about like you're gonna end your life or whatever, but you're just gonna give up on X, Y, and Z. Um, Sometimes like it's not even just holding on, but just being like holding that space. Like, yep, it sucks right now, but I gotta. I have no choice but to keep moving forward, right? And or sitting still with it, so then I can move forward. um, because I was just about done with the medical field and healthcare scene and all that. And right when I was just like, I mean, I was I was actually really close to moving back to Asia. Like, I mean, I was looking at tickets. I was going to take a job there, over there. I was really close, really close. And I was going up to like see my mom and stuff, and like just got this opportunity. And again, I'm not going to go into details about that, but um, and then like my colleagues and whatnot, that I was trying to get something going in Huntsville, like things are going to be going. It looks like well for them, so that's awesome, right? Like, but you just never know what's around that corner, and things can really suck. And I know sometimes it can be really bad. It can be really dark. And some of y'all out there are like, man, it's like most of us can't even imagine. Like when I volunteered and did rotations on oncology units, it's like you see some gnarly stuff, really gnarly stuff. People missing like noses, like all the skin down to the muscle of their neck. They like, yeah, just it's awful. And things could always be worse, always be harder, right? um and I'm not saying like, like sometimes people hold on rather than moving on to the next life, because they do it for their kids, their spouses. They're begging them. Again, that's like, I can't let you go, please. Even you being miserable, even if you survive this horrible surgery or disease or accident, like having you in that state is better than having you have no more pain and moving on to a better situation, whether that's another life, heaven, whatever. And I know it's hard to do that, but it's best for you and them, right? But I'm talking about people where it's just like things just seem so hard, like, so they're thinking about ending things, or just like never going, on a less severe scale, never going back into this field of work. It's just like, well, hold space for that, right? And yeah, maybe go do something else for a bit, but never say never, right? So again, it's like, okay, I'm gonna release all that ickiness, and even the good things. When you dwell on too much of good things in the past, you're missing out on the good things, all these other things in the present and the future. So, it's best just to be like, okay, I'm gonna cut the cord there, wish everybody everything truly the best, and then I'm gonna go work on myself. And then it's like when you're least expecting it, it finds you. And you often hear that, about relationships or jobs, right? But there's a lot of truth to that. And so I'm like, personally, I'm just excited. And and it's not just this work opportunity, but like, I'm working on books. I'm actually working on like three different genres, I guess you could say, of books now. I got the Hindu content stuff that I'm working on. Um, Another thing that I'll talk about later. It's humorous, but I'm going to first get one of the books published out there, and then I'll tell y'all. And then I'm working on my own personal, like my soul's journey, those books. And so I'm excited about that. And then, I've been for a long time dreaming of starting my own temple, or working with other people to start a temple. And like this past year, I've visited so many temples and whatnot across the country that it's like I've gotten ideas, of like what to do and not what not to do, and then also like some things just come to me. And I'm like, man, that's my creativity coming back, and thank the gods for that. But so I'm doing that stuff, and then um, I'm still working on one day getting certified. Probably not this year. I think I'm gonna be doing it next spring or summer. The TCCC certification, become a tactical medic, so that I can work with law enforcement, as needed. Um, so I'm working on that. So many people have told me that with my workouts and whatnot, what I'm trying to do, um, that I should also become a certified, fitness instructor. And I think that's gonna wrap in really well to what I'm doing, right? I'm an integrative practitioner, mostly mental health psychiatry based, but I'm trying to learn these other things, and that will fit nicely into it because I'm already doing health and life coaching. So being a certified fitness instructor, trainer, personal trainer, I should say, that will fit in nicely because I've been working on these programs, these challenges for people. Lately, it's mostly been like men on holistic health, mind, body, spirit health, and coming up with like routines and regimens, to focus on all those areas. So that fits in nicely. And what else? Yeah, I mean, well, I'm trying to be a more dutiful and better son to my mom, and so I'm, seeing her more lately and trying to, plan the future there. And yeah, so I just got a lot on my plate, and that's another reason why it was good for me to make a lot of those videos in the past, but I got way too attached to thinking, oh, I need to get X amount of subscribers or likes or people, all that stuff, right? That helps the algorithm for you to get out there. And it's like, well, maybe that's not what's meant for me or my messages. Maybe they're really only, meant to reach a few people, and that's okay. And I'm hoping that these other things that I'm working on now and this new opportunity, this great opportunity that I have, that I'll be able to more effectively, help people and better my own situation because it was, pretty rough there. I'd say ever since 2020, like for quite a few of us, it was pretty rough. And then just the past couple years, like some out of my own stupidity and stupid choices, and other, people just being not great people. um, that it was just, and just the world being in chaos the way it has been, and all that stuff. It was pretty rough, but I think, like I said, learning how to be like, well, that was a valuable lessons, and a way for me to dig up karma, and have it get shoved in my face. So then it's like, you need to learn from this and then resolve it, burn it, has really helped me like be able to move forward with certain things. And hopefully, even if there's always going to be hiccups, there's always going to be a curveball or, crisis or something that comes up in the future. But hopefully, I'll be more equipped and tolerant and patient to just sit with it and be like, okay, this sucks, but we're going to get through it. One way or another, it's going to resolve. It's not going to be permanent. And, so I'm hoping that's helped build up my resiliency and understanding and all that. And then the other thing too, that I wanted to add with like how busy I am. Like some of you have wondered, like, where did you kind of disappeared off social media, and it's like, well, I needed to take a break from social media. Like, I don't like how it's so hard for me to keep up with everything, and everybody and what they're doing, and I have so many things that ever since I was, for those of you who know me or are aware of, my history. Like, I've lived abroad several times. I, did half my undergrad in Japan and was an apprentice under a well-known artist and art historian. And then I did my first master's in South Korea and my second one at Vandy to become a PMHNP. I've lived in several states. I've worked in several different fields. I've done this, that, all that. It's it's something that, you know, um, I'm not trying to brag, but it's just that demonstrates just how many interests that I have and goals that I have. And when I talk about writing these books, coming up with the content, making it, building a temple, helping people in this way or that way, that is genuinely something that like I love doing. And it makes me a better person. I feel like, because it's more authentically me. But when I get attached to certain people, relationships, things, places, and then I stop practicing, like, trying to achieve all these goals and my endeavors, then that's when I like spin out of control, or it gets ugly, it gets messy, and then I'm not authentically me anymore. I'm this, lower operating version of myself, that's very much attached to all the BS and unhealthy things in this world and this life and the human condition. And a good friend had pointed that out to me, that like you are one of the most brilliant, interesting people, that I know. But man, when you get in certain relationships, or attached or fixated on certain things or places, or don't let go of this or that, like it, you disintegrate and you fall into chaos. And for me, like, I'll admit, because it's been said anyways, I'm an intense person. But I think like that's why it's best for me to focus on all these goals that I have, because that's like coming deep down ever since I was a kid, just deep down. I was the weird artist, who wore like fake, purple red fur coats with like the mohawk hair and piercings, but then was also like, on a football team and track, and was a good student, all that. Um, that I just, there's so many things that I want to achieve or learn or explore, that for me to focus on that and not worry about all these like half-assed relationships, or like, oh well, everybody else likes to go out to the bars and drink, and then be promiscuous or be serial, monogamous, and just one person to the next, or zone out to whatever is trending on Hulu, or Disney Plus, or get so attached to what my kids are obsessed with, or indoctrinated into, and I got to be on board with that too. Like, when I see people do that, like, it works for them because it's a distraction. But for me, I like, once you get to a point, y'all, in your life where you realize I have to be my authentic self, and I have to work on whatever, karma or my swadharma, my personal dharma, I have to work on that. Like, when it aches and in your, deep within you, like when you're not doing it, or just, it's irritating because you're avoiding it, that's a sign that you have to get to work. Other people are not in a working lifetime, they're just passing time. Let them pass time. That's okay. Wish them the best, right? For those that are like starting to show signs, like, I want to be awake. I truly want to be awake and authentically me, and work on, resolving X, Y, or Z. Then work with those people, help those people, right? Some of them need guides, and you might have more experience to like point them in the right direction. So, but if not, then again, you just say, okay, well, I release this karmic tie, whatever it is that we have, and call my energy and time back, and wish everybody the best, and I'm going to move forward. All right. So honor the past, honor the dead, to wrap this up. do all those things, reflect, introspect, right? It helps you better understand, because maybe not this time around, but the next time when you do it, when that comes up, whether it's a holiday or someone's, anniversary of someone's passing, or the end of a relationship or job loss or a catastrophe or some trauma, like you might learn something new, or you might have a like new understanding of it that you didn't have before. And I was even thinking like today, on Saturdays, I try to observe, and work on my connection with Shani Dev, or Saturn. He's really heavy in my chart, and which makes sense. And he's also sorry, there's an alarm going off. He's associated with disabilities, elderly, that those sorts of people. And I just, man, it's just so happened to have in the past several years, like a lot of women, or females, even my dog, who are like that. And then I know that working with like Hanuman, for instance, or Kartikeya is good for me, to show healthy masculinity and strength and wisdom and devotion as a man, as a masculine, energy, and how that looks, so that resolves a lot of, my, I think, relational habits with the opposite sex. And and then also realizing, like, just because we have gods and goddesses doesn't mean, and there's masculine energy and feminine energy, doesn't mean that that's the same as human gender, right? Feminine and masculine. Like learning that difference too, and then letting go of any attachments, and to even ideas of what you think is an ideal situation to be in. That can really help you grow and move forward. So again, I'm not saying like completely like I'm so done with this, never again. um but just say for now, yeah, like I release you. I wish everybody and everything the best. I'm going to focus on myself, move forward on my journey, and do what I have to do in this lifetime. But I honor the past, and I honor the dead, right? Because like I said, I've had that phrase going in my head lately, like the dead make way for the living, but the living still need to honor the dead. So with that, I wish you all happy Halloween, All Saints Day, Dia de los Muertos, and any anniversaries that you might have. I wish you the best on that, and I wish you all the good healing, and truly helpful accomplishments going forward in your life. I will make a video sometime down the road, but like I said, I'm just really busy, so it might be a while. But till then, take care.